exciting to know you were here. Um, all right. This is
Yeah,
so
so
great.
everyone, this is Easy. Easy lives in Buffalo, New York, and Easy works for the same organization as me. We've been colleagues for a couple of years for no innovation and inclusive innovation. We've done lots of projects together. In February, we are in Barcelona together, and Easy is passionate about creativity and education, creativity and parenting, and has a very interesting TED talk on creativity and parenting. You might want to watch it. Please easy share some of that with all of us. And she has recently launched an online course for educators with one of our associates, Cindy Bernays. So she'll tell us more about all the wonderful stuff that she does. And today she gets to talk to us about a totally different subject, and we're excited. We love you. And do you want to try share your screen while I'm here?
Yes, absolutely.
So down there is a button, share your screen.
Okay, I am just going
Yeah.
to slideshow.
Then you can drive your own slides.
Yes. Excuse me while I just pull this up. Okay. Do you see my presenter view or do you see just the slide?
We see your presenter view, so you might want to.
That's what I thought.
There's, in fact, at the top, there's swap display. There are 4 icons right at the top. There's one that says swap display. Just click on that.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't remember if you do the.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's what I thought. Thank you very much for your help.
All right.
Okay. So this is actually a topic that I've been thinking about a great deal recently. As Pulang mentioned, I work with educators, and one of the things that we've discovered is that in the current state of affairs, educators who are really, I think, one of the heroes on the forefronts have really been struggling because on top of the challenges of moving into the virtual space without any preparation, without really any room to get ready for it or have any training around it, they're also navigating what we call a VUCA world. And VUCA is a term that was created in 1987 by the armed forces to describe the kind of environment within which the Cold War was conducted. And if you think about it, right now, the situation that we find ourselves in feels very much as if we are at war, except our enemy here is an invisible virus. So the elements of VUCA that we are really grappling with currently include things like volatility and uncertainty. And volatility is basically, I'm just going to define it very quickly. And if you already are familiar with VUCA, please be patient. We won't spend a lot of time on this. But volatility is when we're experiencing a lot of rapid change. And the change is kind of like a strong wind that blows you off course. So imagine you're a ship and you're sailing in the water and a storm comes along and it throws you off course. And that keeps happening. So you keep having to reorient yourself to your original course. Uncertainty is where we simply cannot predict the future. We don't have the information. We don't have any idea of whether, for example, the number of reported cases of coronavirus are going to be going up, they're going to stabilize and flatten, or are they actually going to be going down? It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen next. Complexity. This is where we're really challenged to understand how one thing is connected to another. It's a very convenient state of affairs when we can say that if we pull on thread A, then we will create movement around B. But when that's no longer possible for us to see how things are connected, we actually end up pulling on something and we're not sure what kind of repercussions that will have. And this is something that I see, for example, I live in New York State in the United States. And the conversation that I hear everywhere is, you know, should we lift the lockdown? So all of us are quarantined in our homes. And the question is, should we lift the lockdown? Well, the thing is that if we pull open that door and walk through it, where there's so many things which are connected to that will then start a domino effect that we cannot predict because we're in such a volatile state. So you can see how all of these things together are starting to create a sense of anxiety on our part. And then we have this thing called ambiguity. And ambiguity is really like attempting to navigate your way from point A to point B, but through a thick fog. And you simply don't have all the information. You don't know if the next step you take is going to take you over a cliff or into a pond or into a pothole. You just cannot see what all the terrain looks like. And so you're always having to make assumptions. You're always having to be safe and extra safe because you just don't know what all the information that you need to make good decisions is out there. So why am I starting with VUCA? Well, there's a reason why. It's because our brains are wired to respond in 3 different ways, right? And right now, when we are in a situation where we feel as if we're under attack, so we're living in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous state, then the tendency is that we are going to be reacting from our gator brain. So that is our brainstem. It is our reptilian brain, and it's wired to respond by either freezing with inaction, so you become paralyzed by fear, or you run away and hide. And I know that initially when everything started going to crazy town, I just wanted to get into bed and pull the covers over and hide from it all. I just wanted to ignore it and pretend like it wasn't happening. And the other thing is fear. It's just fright. And you know it because it's anxiety. It's the inability to sleep. It's the inability to take a deep breath. So all of those things are natural reactions. Our bodies are wired that way. However, the human brain is actually quite a remarkable thing. We also have the part of the brain which is the limbic brain, and this is where I believe resilience comes from. This is the part where care for self and care for others comes in, right? This is where if we took the time to pause and take a breath and practice a little bit of self-care and self-compassion, then what we do is we buy ourselves a little bit of time for that stimulus, which initially creates a reactive response from us, to kind of stay in that moment, know, observe, understand what's happening around us, and then allow us to engage our neocortex, which is where we do all of our higher level thinking. It's actually where we think instead of react. It's where we understand what's happening. It's where we learn to evaluate and make choices. It's where we create. It's where we create new responses. It's where we create new answers to the challenges that life is presenting to us. So the thing is, what can we do with creativity and with creative tools and with self-care that allow us to move from a state where we are being reactive to a more resilient state that allows us to be responsive? So if even in this condition, if we can learn how to build some resilience and how to be more responsive in a VUCA world, then you are really building a skill set that allows you to navigate all kinds of situations, even when COVID-19 is over and done with, which I hope will be soon. So developing resilience, this is that middle piece. This is where we take care of our limbic brain. And the first thing is just pausing. You know, we tend to get on a treadmill and start running, and it seems almost as if the treadmill gets faster and faster and faster. And we have so much going on that we are simply not even pausing to take a breath. And it seems as if we're being run off our feet. The thing with the treadmill is it has a stop button. And you have the choice to stop that treadmill and get off it. You can call pause, you can ask people for a little bit of time away just because you need it. And if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. So the choice is really yours. And I really believe that if we took that initiative to hit pause for a little while, it would be very good for us. And then breathing. I know that Mark has been doing some work with you around breathing, and I love that. Unfortunately, I was not in Mark's session. Otherwise, I would be able to speak to the techniques. But there are people who are far more qualified than I am to teach you how to breathe. For me, I practice just one simple form of yogic breathing where I inhale in 3 parts and exhale in 3 parts. I would lead you through it, except it will feel very inauthentic because I have never done that before and I don't want to do it badly the first time with you. So I trust that you will find a breathing technique that works for you. The third thing, one of my favorite movies of all time is a movie called 3 Idiots. And it's actually a movie out of Bollywood. So, but it comes with English captions, and you will, if you go find it on online, and it might even be available on YouTube or Amazon or Netflix. I'm not sure what access you have to all of those providers, but look for it. It's an Indian movie called 3 Idiots. And one of the things that I absolutely love about that movie is this one trick that the hero of the movie has, where when he's in a situation that is causing anxiety, he actually puts his hand on his heart and he reassures his heart and he says, all is well, right? And he just puts his hand on his heart and he says, all is well. And that is remarkable. If we treat our hearts and our emotions with some compassion, you're going to be surprised by what becomes possible within yourself, the change that it creates within yourself. So I know it sounds crazy for me to ask you to do this, but just if you put your hand over your heart and you tell yourself, all is well. And then just breathe that in and believe it. Okay. All right. I wish I could see what was happening in the chat because I see that it's buzzing, but I can't read what's in the chat while I'm sharing my screen. Or can I? Any of the other panelists? Is there anything in there that I should be looking at? Ah, wait. Oh, thank you. All right. Yes, the slides are drawn by me because I am really not a professional slide developer. And what I discovered is that by the time I explain to someone else what I need, I've already drawn what I need. So I just go ahead and use that. And as you will see in a second, I can't even draw a real circle. All right. So having said, having built a little bit of resilience and given yourself a little pause and reminded yourself that all is well, I promised you 2 strategies, right? And the 2 strategies that I promised you are around how can we use creativity in a way that it serves as an antidote to all the anxiety that we're feeling and all of the fear and all of the thank you. And all of the this need to fly or fry or hide or to freeze, right? How do we continue to operate and navigate in a world where we're feeling that way? So one of the things that I have discovered, which is really effective, at least for me, and I believe is effective for everyone whom I've shared it with based on their feedback, is this idea of when you are on a ship that gets continually thrown off course, what do you do, right? Well, I imagine what you do is you say, okay, initially I needed to head north because that was the direction in which my destination lay. But now all of a sudden I find myself turned around and I'm no longer going north, no longer makes sense because my destination now lies to my east, right? So what do? You keep reorienting yourself so that you're facing your goal again, and you don't change your goal. What you change is your plans. So the idea of long-term goals and short-term planning is really useful when we're facing a world that has a lot of volatility and a lot of uncertainty. And when we're setting a goal, there are three things which you really have to consider, especially in these times when our emotional and all kinds of resources, Wi-Fi, bandwidth, even access to food, access to toilet paper for some, all of our resources are limited. And so we have to think that with finite resources, what is it that we wouldn't want to focus on? And I have three questions that I ask myself when I am considering the goals that I need to work on. And the three questions I ask myself is, one, can I influence the outcome? Because there may very well be goals that I would have been striving towards under normal circumstances. But I would be relying on a number of other things working in order for me to be able to get to those goals. And that's no longer possible. So when I'm sifting through my goals, I really want to select the things that I can influence, that I have the power to still put into action and put into place. Secondly, I don't want to waste any of my finite resources on working on something that doesn't make a difference. So for me right now as a facilitator, and I'm just sharing this as an example, as a facilitator and as someone who develops a lot of training and workshops and creativity, I have really set aside a lot of the things that I would normally have been doing at this time to focus on really using and offering help in places where it's most needed right now, where it will have the greatest impact. I am working with people whom I would normally never have been working with, only because those people are on the front lines, the educators who are on the front lines, working with students who are about to graduate from college, for example. And now all of a sudden they're struggling, not just because they don't have closure at the end of their year and the end of their college journeys, but they also are stepping into a world that nobody has prepared them for. So I'm choosing right now to make a difference in that arena. And then the third thing is interest. Remember, you yourself are a finite resource. So if you are going to take and invest the time in things that are going to be difficult, because we're all working with difficulties of going virtual, we're working with the challenges of selective bandwidth on Wi-Fi, we're working with the challenges of time differences, we're working with the challenges of having our children home and sometimes underfoot as we're trying to work. So you are a finite resource. So focus on the things that you really are interested in doing, things that you're passionate about, and things that fill you and give you a sense of joy even in these times? So those are the three key questions to ask yourself. Then what do? Well, as I mentioned, you have long-term goals and short-term plans. So imagine if you were playing and I think this is a basketball court. I'm not quite sure, but I think it might be. So if you were playing a game of basketball, the ball moves all over the court, but everybody knows that eventually the ball needs to get through that hoop on one end, right? And so a whole team works towards that. And at any given point in time, while they keep the long-term goal in mind, the thing is the short-term plan is always to get it to the next person who's open and who can pass the ball to someone else who can advance that mission. So this is the philosophy and this is the approach that I'm going to invite you to take. So I hope you have access to some pen and paper or something to write on, because I'm going to invite you right now to try this technique. All right. So in the next 3 minutes, I want you to take a piece of paper, divide it into 3 columns, and label one column 1 day. The next column is 1 week. And the last column is 1 month. And within each of these, just start listing what are your goals within that time frame. And don't worry about judging whether you can influence them, whether they have impact or interest. You can do that later. Right now, I just want you to list everything that you've been juggling, put it all down on that piece of paper. If someone had music, it would be wonderful if they could play it at this time. I'm keeping track of time. Ooh, thank you. Thank you. Take 1 more minute.
Mahalakshmi Vaishnavi Namastasye 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 Namo Namaha
Okay. Let's bring it back. And your list will not be complete. I don't expect that in 3 minutes you can think of everything that you have to do. However, here's the thing that starts to emerge, right? You start to see the connectivity. You start to see that the things that are in your 1 month column the things that you need to get done within 1 month, inform what needs to get done by 1 week. And that then leads to what you need to get done in 1 day. And here's the beautiful thing. The only thing you need to focus on getting done is what is in that 1 day column. Don't worry about the 1 week and the 1 month. You can't anticipate what's going to happen a week from now. Yesterday, I discovered that we are now under quarantine till the 15th of May. Until a few days before that, I thought we were only going to be quarantined until the end of April. So things can change, and there's no point in spending our finite resource of time and energy worrying about what's going to happen a week from now or even a month from now. But your goals lie in those columns. And that's okay. That's where you go in and you say, all right, what can I influence? What will have impact? And what am I interested in doing? And once you've identified that, let that inform where you're going to do your planning. And all of the planning happens in the 1 day column. And you will see that actually in my goals, I have surviving COVID-19 with my sanity intact. That's my long-term goal. So what I've decided is that my 1 week goal to represent that long-term goal is going to be to walk 10 miles. And then all it means is that for every single day on my to-do list, which is effectively what the 1 day column becomes, is I do an evening walk with my family, right? Just keep your focus on the timeline that you can control. And for now, that timeline is 1 day. And it's okay because it lets you focus your energies and your finite resources in a direction that works for you. All right. So, question for you. How does the strategy help us be more resilient and responsive? And if you could post that in the chat, then I'll know whether or not this is something helpful, and I'll continue to share it onwards with others, or I'll stop today and I won't share it again. So if you found it useful, if you think it might be helpful and how, I'd love to see that in the chat, please. All right, yes. Indeed, it gives us time to think about what comes next without fear, panic, or anxiety. Absolutely. Yeah. Breaks it down into manageable and changeable chunks and helps you be present and mindful. Yes, it creates the brain space. This is exactly right. I think of my brain as being a finite resource. And yeah, one breath at a time. Absolutely. I should just find a link to 3 Idiots and share it here because it is one of my all-time favorites and I think it's worth watching. Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Makes me realize that I can't run or carry others until I fix my broken legs. Yeah, since I plan not to gain weight in a month's time, I need to exercise daily and set weight targets. That COVID-15, yeah, it's well hidden in this top, which I now realize was a bad move for this video call because it seems to be having a life of its own. What's the YouTube link? Alchemy Inspiration? What's the link for?
www.alchemyinspiration.com.
Okay, thank you. Super. All right, so let's move on. I think, oh, it's the 3 Idiots. Perfect. I'm going to watch that again tonight. Thank you. Okay. So once you figured out what to do, remember the concept of living in a complex and ambiguous state. The problem is that when we figure out what to do and we take that next step forward, we're still making a lot of assumptions, right? So we're still making assumptions at some point, simply because you cannot make decisions without first saying, okay, this is what I believe, and therefore this is the decision that I'm going to make. So in the current state, how do we make better decisions? And how do we make better choices, given that we don't have all of the information that we need? Well, the way that I suggest to people that we might want to respond is by using what's called the learning cycle. And it comes from Kolb's work on experiential learning cycles. And I should have put a reference to it in my slide, and I'm afraid I haven't. But if someone would be willing to find that reference and stick it in the chat for me right now, that would be great. It's to David Kolb's work. I'll just put his last name here and you should be able to find it. Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Okay. So what I've done is I've adapted the learning cycle to a very simple format, and it's 3 questions, and that's all you need to remember. When you do something, when you make a choice and you put it into action, you get a result, right? So the first question you ask yourself is, well, what was that? What was it that happened? What was the outcome? What were the, how did people react? How did the situation change? What was the change that I managed to create? Then you ask yourself the question, well, so what? Okay, so based on what it was that you created, what is it that you have learned from that experience? So what do you now know that you didn't know before? What can you now predict with better accuracy the next time, simply because of the experience that you've gone through? And then ask yourself the question, now what? Okay. So if that's what I've learned, what does that mean for the future? And in terms of what it means for the future, what is it that you would stop doing? What is it that you might start doing? And what is it that you would continue to do because it worked? So when Susanna took us through her mural board, and we started with what was it that works in terms of building trust in a community, then all of those ideas that we listed there are actually things that we either want to continue or start to do, because they come from experience and we know that we can build on what works. That's the whole concept of appreciative inquiry, is finding what works and then continuing to build on it. So through using this learning cycle, we're able to say, well, what was it that we experienced? What did we learn from that experience? And what does that mean for what we're going to do next? By continually going through this and by treating every decision that we make as an opportunity to learn, we actually develop agility. We develop the ability to be adaptive and responsive, even in complex and ambiguous states. So let's practice this. And I'm going to take our very real experience. So over the last 6 weeks, in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, a large majority of the world's population has had to practice physical distancing. And we now have to work and socialize in a virtual space, right? So this is the experience that we've all had. What I'd like you to think about is, what are 3 aspects of your life that have been impacted by this unexpected change? So pull out that piece of paper again and list 3 aspects of your life that were impacted by this unexpected change. And when you're done, if you could give me an indication, maybe in the chat, because that's all I can see right now. to let me know that you have them. And when I have 3 people who've said that they're done, great, thank you. Then I will continue. Thank you, Andrew. Noella, thank you. And Rosemary, thank you. Wonderful. Okay, Deborah, I think I can move along then. All right. Now, when you look at those 3 things that you, the 3 ways in which that situation had an impact on you, what have you learned from that? So as a result, what are some important things that you've learned about yourself based on your reaction to the situation, or based on how your life was impacted by the situation? So I'd like you to list 3 things that you have learned about yourself. And when you're done, anyone after Barbara, I'm going to be looking for you on the chat again. Great. Super. So we have 2 people who are done. I'm looking for 1 more, and then I will move on. Great. Thank you, Andrew. All right. So you now have some learning about yourself. Based on that learning, what are some things that you can start to do? What are some things that you can stop doing? And what are some things that you would continue doing? And when you have finished listing those things, again, I'm going to be looking in the chat for an indicator that you're done. In the current quarantine or later. That's up to you, Deborah. So you can decide. Yes, Noella, you might want to stop a few things before starting others. And you can have both. You can have something that you're going to stop doing and then replace it with something that you're going to start doing. Yes, we're all trying to limit the number of distractions. All right. If you have something that you are going to start doing, would you be willing to share it in the chat, please? Just something that you're going to start doing, something that's on your list for starting. I'd love to see it in the chat. Refocus on sharing garden goods with neighbors, working more from home. Wonderful. 1 hour of exercise and solitude per day and meditation. These are great things to start. I hope they're going to go in the 1-day column on your planning list. Keep in touch with friends. Start. Yes, yes, yes. Use a Muse headband. Huh, haven't heard of that. Excellent. Okay. What are some things that you're going to stop doing? I'm find your ikigai. Yes. Start building online trainings. Been postponed it for far too long. Happy to help with that, Noella. All right, things you're going to stop doing. If I can see maybe 3 things that people are going to stop doing, that would be great. Stop scheduling back-to-back meetings. Yes. Start new contracts and technical investments. Yes. Stop putting work first. Thank you, Barbara, because you are a finite quantity, finite resource. So take care of yourself. Ditto. Yep. Refocus on individual coaching sessions. Very nice. Okay, stop putting pressure on my, yes, overachievers, please stop. Great. And the last question, what are you going to continue doing? What are you doing well now? And you want to be mindful about continuing to do that. What's working for you right now? Great, cooking for my family. Yeah, stop overthinking the small stuff. Managing energetic flow. You're a master at that, Mark. All right, one more, please. Reaching out to friends and colleagues. Yes, that's wonderful. That's so great. I'm going to share something that my husband and I have decided to continue doing, even though we thought that it wasn't possible. We started playing bridge at the start of this year. And while we're both terrible at it, we've really enjoyed socializing with some friends and learning how to play bridge with them. Well, now because of the quarantine, we were in a position where we couldn't play anymore. So what we decided to do was we decided to teach our children how to play bridge. And let me tell you that within a matter of 10 days, they've been beating us hollow. So clearly we're better teachers than students. But that's something that we're going to continue to do. Great, my husband is playing online virtual bridge. He loves it. Absolutely, it's actually a really fun strategic thinking game. Uses my brain in a new way. So thank you for sharing, Rosemary. All right, so the last question. How might this strategy help us be more resilient and responsive? So what does using the learning cycle do in order to help us be more resilient and responsive? Anybody? You can share in the chat again. I'm hoping people are typing out long answers. It gives us closure. Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Greater awareness and readiness to be more responsive. Helps us connect our activities and organize our time. It fosters flexibility. Yes, and this too shall pass. Being nimble. And it certainly stops anxiety. Yes. All of those things. Well, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to pause my screen share and I am going to make myself available for any questions. If anybody has any questions, love to hear them. And you can post them in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll be watching both. Tell me, Izzy, what is your fervent hope for this coming year? It's a big reach, Elizabeth, but my fervent hope for this coming year is that that my faith in mankind and my faith in humanity is not misplaced, to discover that it is really warranted, to find that we have what it takes to survive this and to actually grow from the situation that we are in today. So, yeah, I certainly hope so. I'm going to be working on that. Ah. Oh, Noella, so this helps you bring it all together? I wish I could have been here. Thank you. To enjoy all of this. I plan to watch all the recordings because I know I missed some beautiful, beautiful sessions. And I know that because I know the people who were presenting. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any questions for me? Anything that I can help with? Oh, my phone is ringing, but it's not from anyone. Resilience and self-care are two sides of the same coin. Yes, breathing in and out with each other. Yes, thank you.
Izzy?
Thank you. Yes, Pulang.
Since you still have time and I don't see any hectic questions coming your way, I'm going to be selfish with your time with the Q&A and pop the first question.
There is something in the Q&A. Hang on.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on.
Okay.
I gotta
Let's
check.
put Andrew first. That's my friend from Switzerland, a professor in innovation in Switzerland.
Great.
I grew up with him. So let's put him first.
Perfect. So I'm actually going to speak the answer. Is that okay rather than type it?
Yeah, I know. Speak it. Yeah.
Okay. So Andrew, what's really interesting is that you are you're saying that real life gets in the way of being able to use these tools. Here is where these tools come from. They come from my real life. So every single tool that I use in either the corporate space or the education space or in any space has first survived contact with reality in my home. So here is a starting point. Try to use these tools first within your home with your family, right? Introduce the learning cycle to your family. Actually, in our family, we've used it for years and years as an alternative to disciplining. And it got to a point, there's a video that I'd be happy to share with you later, where I shared the story of my daughter complaining that she wished she had a normal mother. And she said, why can't you just be a normal mother? And the reason she said that was because instead of punishing or disciplining my children for anything that they did, which where I wish they had made better choices, I would take them through the learning cycle. And I would ask them to think about what choices they had made and what had happened as a result and what they had learned from that and how it would inform what they did next. And when I asked her why I was such a terrible parent, because I couldn't imagine that having her phone taken away or being grounded was a better option, she said, I don't like it because you make me take responsibility. And I thought that was a great parenting win. So try these things in a small place first. First, try them in a safe space like your home before you try and take them out into the rest of the world. That's my advice. Any other questions?
So actually,
where can we find recorded classes? Oh, for the session. Sorry?
No, Andrew asked a question that's very close to my heart, Izzy.
Yeah.
I guess me and him actually in the same place. He's a professor who lives in Switzerland and has two very little ones.
Yeah.
A year apart, a young wife, and pursuing his PhD, working full time and running businesses. And that's a predicament that most of us younger parents find ourselves in. Please give us something very practical. I mean, a scenario has just played itself out right here with me, you know, with my son saying, yesterday I didn't have access for the whole day, and today you're telling me I don't have access to this so-called office at home. How, like, it's hard. Can you give us
So
some practical, real like stuff? Your kids are now in their late 20s, I think. Your
no,
daughter
they're in
is
their early 20s.
early 20s, I need to
Yeah,
say, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And they're getting distinctions, adversity, well-rounded individuals who, some of them are even doing creativity work.
yeah.
Please just give us some, very practical things around managing everything.
Well, I'll say one thing. The most important thing is letting go of the idea of perfection. So if you can embrace the fact or embrace the reality that you won't get it right all of the time, but that you will keep working to get it better all of the time, to improve all of the time, that makes all the difference. The one bit of feedback that I have received from people, actually in pretty much every context that I've been in, is that I've always led with this idea that I'm a lifelong learner and that I'm a work in progress. So whenever I enter a space, I enter it as a learner rather than an expert. And that makes a big difference, because even within my family, even in situations where right now you have young kids who are vying for internet usage, I have older kids who are both college students, and they need the Wi-Fi to be able to access their classes. And at the same time, I need access to the Wi-Fi because I'm delivering sessions for clients, and or I'm teaching, and so we always have this push and pull. And so we've kind of learned to sit down and talk about it as a family and say, all right, what are the things that we cannot compromise on, and then where is the space for negotiation? And perhaps with younger families, having those conversations with the other adults in the room is a good idea, and asking for what we need. I mean, really, I'll never forget the time when I finally learned what vulnerability was. And vulnerability in my world, it looks like this. There are three steps to it as far as I'm concerned. The first is um, acknowledging that you need help, right? And that's acknowledging it to yourself. So you have just told me that you need help with trying to figure out how to balance all of this. That's great. That's the first step. The second step is actually asking somebody for help. So inviting someone else onto your team and saying, please, I'm struggling to figure out how to do this. Can you help me? And the third step, the one that always trips me up, is accepting the help when offered. Because if you're an overachiever, which I happen to know a certain Dr. Pulang who might be an overachiever, right? You really tend to think of accepting help from others as being something of a weakness. If you start to think of that as truly embracing your vulnerability and leading with that, it changes everything. It really shifts your context and your ability to function in that kind of world. I don't know if that was practical for you, but
Absolutely.
practical help, but
Absolutely.
that's what I can
Yeah,
offer right now.
absolutely.
Great.
Any more questions? I feel like I still want to use another 5 minutes of your time because we still have 5 minutes before we
Sure.
introduce the next speaker. And if nobody else has a
Well,
question,
actually, somebody
can,
asked me, how do I make my slides?
uh,
Um, would you like me to answer that?
yes,
And can I share my insights on educational thinking? Yes.
yes, please.
Um, the quick answer to how do I make my slides, I make them on my iPad. I use an app called Paper. I have an iPad Pro, but any iPad that gives you a pencil and the ability to draw, you can use. And that's it. I use Paper is a very simple app to learn to draw with. And I do almost all of my visuals on there. If you don't have an iPad that you can draw on, then just take a piece of paper and draw on it and take a picture. That's what I do. That's what I used to do before I got my iPad. So it's not very technically challenging. And then we have, can you share some insights on my educational thinking? Yes, I can. One of my big things is that we are very often brought into educational spaces to work with teachers with this idea that we can give teachers tools and then step away and they'll be able to put them into place. And that's not really something that I've ever seen as being successful. What I find is that we first have to prepare the teachers in order for them to be able to use those tools. I kind of think of it as trying to install an Apple or iPhone app on an Android phone. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because to run an iPhone app, you need an iOS. And in order to run creativity apps, you need a creative operating system, a COS. And I really believe that if we skip the step of helping teachers develop their own internal creative operating systems, then we don't give them the resilience and the ability to really address the challenges of bringing creativity into the classroom. So just as a little bit, that's my soapbox speech about where to start with creativity in education. Thank you.
I so love it. Can we quote you on that? I
Yes,
love it. I actually have never thought about it like that.
I was just about to share a visual on LinkedIn that someone's made for me. So a professional graphic facilitator has built a visual of what it means to have a creative operating system. And yes, absolutely using it.
Please share. Are you going to share it on LinkedIn? Because I follow you, then we can.
Yes, I will. Absolutely. I should do it later today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. Your presentation was just the right mode from us, this side of the world, towards the end of the day, after about 8 or 9 speakers, just so slow and soothing and just like taking it in and reflective. And it's just the right energy to set Elizabeth up. So,
oh, great.
And then after that, it's Rosemary.
I can't wait. I get to hang out for Elizabeth's session, so I'm excited. That's great. Thank you so much, everyone. I really, really appreciate your feedback and your participation. So thank you all.
Thank you. You have Dabs. Dabs is here. Hi, Dabs.
Hey.
She said, there's someone who had said something about your presentation was like a big warm hug.
Okay, this is Noella, and I know her very well. And yes, I've had the privilege of meeting her in Romania, and she is definitely one of my favorite people. So yes, this is the best I can do in terms of virtual hugs.
Beautiful. And Nick too, both of us know Nick very well. Nick says, as always, you delivered. Thanks, Easy.
Thank you.
What's up, Nick? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And up next, we have Elizabeth. But before that, do you guys want me to play you some nice